Kodo's swift intervention. As just poised his machete, ready to deliver the final blow to President Natsu, the imminent tragedy was abruptly interrupted by the distant roar of a motorcycle. The sound echoed through the chaotic scene, piercing the tense silence like a clarion call. In a breathtaking display of strength and mastery over martial arts, a machete soared through the air with unparalleled speed and precision, aimed directly at Jess. Such a feat required exceptional strength and skill, attributes possessed by only a select few in this world. The machete's trajectory held true, its tip pointed unwaveringly at Jess, poised to deliver a devastating strike. Realizing the impending danger, Jess attempted to react, but it was too late. The machete slashed across his face with a sickening sound, claiming one of his ears and a spray of blood. Jess let out a guttural scream of pain and rage, the sound reverberating through the air. The sudden assault threw him off balance, the shock evident in his wild, panicked eyes. In a crucial moment, the president's advisor had swiftly informed Kodo, the major general of the elite guerrillas division, of the emergency. Without a moment to spare, Kodo, known for his unparalleled combat prowess and unwavering dedication to duty, quickly rallied his group of soldiers and raced to the president's location. Riding a motorcycle and armed with a machete of his own, Kodo's swift response prevented Jess from carrying out his lethal intent. Approaching the scene with fierce determination, Kodo witnessed the chaos unfolding before him. Jess, with blood streaming down his face, stood amidst the wreckage, his murderous intent still burning bright. The president, though battered and bruised, stood defiant, his resolve unbroken despite the odds stacked against him. Without hesitation, Kodo decisively launched his own machete at Jess from a distance of only 20 meters. The blade sliced through the air with deadly accuracy, its trajectory true as it hurtled toward its target. Simultaneously, Kodo propelled himself into the air, his motorcycle surging ahead with greater speed. The collision between the motorcycle and a hyena was instantaneous, resulting in the hyena's immediate demise as it was sent sprawling to the ground. Upon landing with a grace born of years of training, Kodo seamlessly transitioned into hand-to-hand combat, his movements fluid and precise. In a blur of motion, he engaged the remaining hyenas with calculated efficiency, his strikes landing with devastating force. A swift left kick to the head of one, followed by a turning kick to the chest of another, left the adversaries crumpled on the ground, their bodies still. In less than a minute, Kodo's intervention had not only thwarted Jess' murderous intent, but also incapacitated 3 hyenas, effectively turning the tide of the battle. His extraordinary strength and martial prowess were on full display, a testament to years of rigorous training and unwavering dedication to his duty as Major General of the elite guerrillas division. Amidst the chaotic clash with the hyenas, Kodo's sudden appearance on the battlefield sent shockwaves through the adversaries' ranks. The highly organized hyenas, known for their stubbornness and collective strategy, quickly redirected their attention towards Kodo, recognizing him as a formidable threat. In a swift and coordinated motion, they unleashed a barrage of gunfire in his direction, hoping to overwhelm him with sheer firepower. But Kodo, undeterred by the overwhelming odds stacked against him, reacted with lightning-fast reflexes and a keen tactical mind honed through years of rigorous training. With a calculated leap, he seized 2 hyenas as shields against the incoming bullets, using their bodies to absorb the deadly projectiles while simultaneously closing the distance between himself and the remaining attackers. With his adversaries momentarily stunned by the unexpected turn of events, Kodo launched into action, unleashing a flurry of devastating Muay Thai hand strikes and karate kicks with lethal precision. Each blow found its mark, incapacitating the hyenas with bone-crushing force and leaving them reeling in pain. The battlefield erupted into a frenzied spectacle of flying bullets and expertly executed martial arts, with Kodo's remarkable resilience and combat prowess on full display for all to witness. Echoes of majesty. Bullets grazed Kodo's flesh, leaving shallow wounds that served as a testament to his indomitable spirit and unwavering determination. Yet, despite the searing pain, he pressed on, fueled by a singular focus on neutralizing the threat posed by the hyena gang and ensuring the safety of President Natsu and his remaining allies. In a matter of moments that felt like an eternity, Kodo single-handedly incapacitated more than a dozen hyenas, his movements a seamless blend of speed, power, and precision. The relentless onslaught of his attacks left the hyenas scrambling to defend themselves, their once formidable facade crumbling under the relentless pressure of Kodo's assault. Sensing an opportunity to gain the upper hand, Kodo pushed forward with unwavering resolve, his every movement calculated to maximize the effectiveness of his strikes. With each devastating blow, he whittled away at the hyenas' defenses, systematically dismantling their ranks with ruthless efficiency. As the tide of battle began to turn decisively in favor of Kodo and his allies, the remaining hyenas reluctantly began to retreat, their injured leader just barking orders as he made a hasty escape. With one final display of defiance, they provided cover fire for their wounded comrades, their retreat shrouded in a haze of smoke and chaos. With the immediate threat temporarily neutralized, Kodo turned his attention to assisting President Natsu, who had been wounded during the fierce skirmish. With a steady hand and a reassuring presence, he helped the president to a seated position, his gaze never wavering from the retreating figure of Jus, whose cold, calculating eyes burned with a fierce determination that sent a shiver down Kodo's spine. The tumultuous encounter had left an indelible mark on the battlefield, setting the stage for a future reckoning between Kodo and Jus, two titans destined to clash in a battle that would determine the fate of Gorillast and its people. But for now, in this fleeting moment of respite amidst the chaos of war, Kodo stood as a beacon of hope and resilience, his unwavering courage inspiring all who bore witness to his heroic deeds. The aftermath of the intense confrontation left a somber atmosphere lingering over the battlefield, where the echoes of gunfire had only recently faded. The ground was littered with secret agents and hyenas, serving as grim reminders of the violence that had erupted moments before. Amidst the chaos, a lone survivor, a wounded hyena, lay handcuffed and injured, awaiting transport to the hospital under the custody of the police. As Kodo assisted President Natsu to a seated position amidst the debris and carnage, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily upon them both. President Natsu's expression was one of urgency and concern, his eyes locking onto Kodo's with a sense of purpose. Kodo, listen closely, the president began, his voice low and grave, cutting through the tense silence that enveloped them. We are entangled in a plot, a sinister conspiracy aimed at toppling me from the presidency. They've meticulously chosen the moment of my visit to the orphanage. Kodo's eyes widened in shock and disbelief at his father's revelation, the implications of which sent a chill down his spine. Who are they, father? Why would someone plot against you? He asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and uncertainty. I wish I knew, President Natsu replied, his tone heavy with resignation. Since taking office, I've tried to be just and fair, not offending anyone knowingly. But someone has orchestrated this meticulously. You must unravel this web of deceit. A steely determination. A steely determination replaced the initial shock in Kodo's eyes as he nodded in solemn understanding. Ruda is ambitious, Kodo, President Natsu continued, his voice filled with warning. I've sensed it, and you need to be cautious. In the chaos that awaits, you must ascend to the presidency, expose the conspirators, and avenge me. Tears welled up in Kodo's eyes as the weight of his father's words sank in, his heart heavy with grief and resolve. Father, I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted, his voice choked with emotion. You are, Kodo, President Natsu reassured him, his voice filled with pride and conviction. I've watched you grow, and I know you have the strength within. Remember, my son, you are not alone. Lean on those you can trust. With his father's words echoing in his mind, Kodo wiped away his tears, his resolve strengthened by the unwavering support of his father. I'll do it, father, he vowed, his voice steady with determination. I'll fulfill your wishes and bring justice. That's my boy, President Natsu said, his voice filled with pride. Now, remember, stay vigilant, and don't let ambition blind you. Kodo nodded solemnly, his mind already racing with plans and strategies to uncover the truth behind the conspiracy that had claimed his father's life. But as he looked into his father's eyes, he couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of loss and grief that threatened to consume him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Kodo's tears flowed freely, a poignant display of grief and despair. The weight of the revelation and the impending loss of his father figure left Kodo shattered, his heart heavy with sorrow. In a heart-wrenching moment, President Natsu, sensing the gravity of the situation, unleashed a powerful roar, a final testament to his majesty and indomitable spirit. The resonating roar echoed through the air, marking the end of a great leader's life. In response, Kodo, overwhelmed by sorrow, screamed, "Father! Father! Father!" as President Natsu passed away in his arms. The echoes of majesty lingered, leaving a void that Kodo would now have to confront as he embarked on a journey to fulfill the president's last wishes. The mourning of Gorillist. The somber atmosphere that enveloped Gorillist in the wake of President Natsu's tragic demise was palpable, casting a shadow of grief over the entire nation. The vibrant streets, once alive with the bustle of daily life, now echoed with the quiet sorrow of a people in mourning. Flags were flown at half-mast, and the normally jubilant melodies that filled the air were replaced by the solemn tolling of bells. The entire country seemed to hold its breath, united in collective sadness for the loss of a leader who had been the heart and soul of their nation. Kodo, President Natsu's son, stood at the center of this maelstrom of grief. The weight of his father's death bore down on him with an almost unbearable intensity. He had always known that his father was more than just a man. He was a symbol, a beacon of hope and stability for Gorillist. But in these moments following Natsu's death, Kodo felt the full impact of what his father had meant to the nation and to him personally. The loss was not just of a father, but of a guiding star that had always been there, even in the darkest of times. The responsibility of orchestrating a dignified national funeral fell upon Kodo, a task that demanded a level of composure and strength that he struggled to summon. The planning began almost immediately after Natsu's passing, with every detail attended to with solemn reverence. The nation looked to him now, not just as the son of their fallen leader, but as the one who would carry forward his legacy. The funeral proceedings were meticulously arranged. High-ranking officials, dignitaries from neighboring nations, and mourners from all walks of life gathered to pay their respects. The procession was grand yet somber, a fitting tribute to a man who had dedicated his life to the service of his people. Soldiers of the elite Gorillist division, dressed in full regalia, lined the streets, their expressions stoic as they saluted their fallen commander-in-chief. The air was thick with the scent of flowers, wreaths of white lilies, symbols of purity and peace, adorned the route to the burial site. Among the attendees stood Ruda, the new admiral, his imposing figure a striking presence amidst the crowd. His eyes, hard and unreadable, seemed to pierce through the layers of grief that surrounded him. When his gaze met Kodo's, a spark of resentment ignited within Kodo, a fire fueled by a mixture of grief, suspicion, and a burgeoning sense of duty. Kodo could not shake the feeling that Ruda knew more about the tragic events that had led to his father's death than he was willing to admit. The veneer of civility that adorned the occasion barely concealed the invisible tension between the two men. While the nation mourned, an undercurrent of mistrust pulsed between Kodo and Ruda, threatening to erupt at any moment. For Kodo, this tension was not merely political, it was personal. The cryptic words his father had spoken in his final moments echoed in his mind: "You must ascend to the presidency, expose the conspirators, and avenge me." Each word was laden with urgency, reverberating within Kodo's heart like a solemn oath he was bound to fulfill. Duraka, Kodo's steadfast companion and trusted advisor, stood silently by his side, a pillar of strength amid the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. Duraka had been with Kodo through the most challenging moments of his life, and now, more than ever, her presence was a source of comfort. The bond of loyalty and friendship that had been forged through years of shared experiences was unspoken but palpable, and Kodo knew that Duraka would stand by him in the turbulent times that lay ahead. As the funeral procession began, Kodo's heart weighed heavy with sorrow and unanswered questions. The cryptic words of his father plagued his thoughts, creating a riddle that begged to be unraveled. The circumstances surrounding President Natsu's death were shrouded in mystery, casting a shadow of doubt over the mourning nation. The more Kodo thought about it, the more he was convinced that his father's death was not merely the result of a random act of violence, but rather a calculated move in a sinister plot aimed at destabilizing the government. The thought that someone might have orchestrated the assassination of President Natsu filled Kodo with a deep sense of dread. He wondered if Ruda was involved in the plot. Was the admiral merely a bystander in this tragedy, or was he a key player in the conspiracy? These questions gnawed at Kodo's conscience, fueling his determination to uncover the truth and seek justice for his father's untimely demise. Love and respect. As the funeral procession made its way through the streets of Gorilist, the citizens lined the sidewalks, their faces etched with sorrow. The people wept openly, their grief a testament to the love and respect they held for their fallen leader. Kodo watched them from his place at the front of the procession, his emotions a tumultuous mix of pride, sadness, and anger. Pride for the father who had been such a great leader, sadness for the loss of a man who had always been his guiding light, and anger at the unknown forces that had stolen his father from him. The procession wound its way to the funeral home in the heart of the capital, where the final rites would be performed. The cathedral, a towering structure of stone and glass, had been the site of many important events in the history of Gorilist, but none as somber as this. The heavy wooden doors swung open as the casket was carried inside, and the mourners followed, their footsteps echoing off the stone floors. Inside the funeral home, the atmosphere was thick with solemnity. The air was filled with the scent of incense, and the soft strains of a funeral dirge played by organist added to the sense of mourning that pervaded the space. The casket, draped in the flag of Gorilist, was placed at the front of the altar, where it would remain for the duration of the service. Kodo took his place at the front of the congregation, his gaze fixed on the casket that held his father's body. As the service began, he found it increasingly difficult to maintain his composure. The eulogies delivered by various dignitaries and officials, while heartfelt, felt distant and impersonal. They spoke of President Natsu's achievements, his dedication to the nation, and his legacy, but none of them captured the essence of the man Kodo had known as his father. As the final eulogy was delivered, Kodo felt a surge of emotion well up within him. He stood and made his way to the podium, his heart pounding in his chest. The eyes of the people followed him as he approached, and for a moment, the weight of their expectations threatened to overwhelm him. But as he looked out at the sea of faces before him, he saw not just mourners, but the people his father had dedicated his life to serving. And in that moment, Kodo found the strength he needed. Today, Kodo began, his voice steady despite the emotions churning within him, we gather not just to mourn the passing of a great leader, but to honor the memory of a man who was a father to me and a father to this nation. My father, President Natsu, was more than just a leader. He was a man of integrity, of unwavering commitment to justice, and of deep love for his people. Kodo paused, his eyes misting over as memories of his father flooded his mind. To the world, he was President Natsu, a man who led with wisdom and strength. But to me, he was simply father. He was the man who taught me the values of honesty, compassion, and resilience. He was the man who, even in the most trying of times, never lost sight of what was right. As Kodo spoke, people sat in rapt silence, the weight of his words sinking deep into their hearts. He spoke not just as the son of the president, but as a man who had lost someone irreplaceable. His words resonated with the collective grief of a nation in mourning. My father believed in the power of unity, Kodo continued, his voice gaining strength. He believed that together, we could overcome any obstacle, that we could build a future that was brighter and more just. It is now our responsibility to carry that torch forward, to continue the work he started, and to ensure that his legacy endures. Kodo's gaze swept across the faces of the people, his resolve hardening. But we must also seek the truth. We must uncover the forces that conspire to take him from us, and we must bring them to justice. This is not just about vengeance, it's about ensuring that no other family, no other nation, has to endure the pain of such a loss. With those words, Kodo stepped down from the podium, his heart heavy but his resolve unwavering. As he returned to his seat, the people rose to their feet in silent tribute, their respect and admiration for the young man who had just spoken evident in their tear-streaked faces. The remainder of the service passed in a blur for Kodo. His thoughts were consumed by the enormity of the task that lay before him. His father's final words had set him on a path that was fraught with danger and uncertainty. The murky circumstances surrounding President Natsu's death cast a shadow over everything, leaving Kodo to navigate a path obscured by secrets and intrigue. As the service came to an end, the mourners began to file out of the funeral home, their expressions somber. Outside, the sun had begun to set, casting a warm golden light over the city. The long shadows of the buildings stretched across the streets, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors that painted the sky. Kodo remained inside the funeral home, his mind racing with thoughts of the conspiracy that had robbed him of his father. He knew that he could not rest until he had uncovered the truth, but he also knew that he could not do it alone. He would need allies, trusted advisors who could help him navigate the treacherous waters of politics and power. Durika approached him as he stood by the casket, her presence a calming influence on Kodo's tumultuous emotions. "Kodo," she said softly, "your father was a great man, and you will make him proud. But you must be careful. The path ahead is dangerous, and there are those who will stop at nothing to see you fail." "I know," Kodo replied, his voice tinged with sadness. "But I have to do this, Durika. I have to find out who was behind this, and I have to make sure they pay for what they've done." "You will," Durika said, his tone firm. "But you must also be smart about it. There are powerful forces at play here, and you can't take them on alone." Kodo nodded, knowing that Durika was right. The task before him was monumental, and the stakes were higher than ever. But he was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. For his father, for his nation, and for the future of Gorillist. As they left the funeral home and stepped out into the fading light, Kodo felt a sense of purpose settle over him. The grief that had weighed him down was still there, but it was now tempered by a resolve that burned bright within him. He would honor his father's memory by fulfilling his final wishes, and he would not rest until the truth was brought to light. The days that followed the funeral were a whirlwind of activity. Kodo threw himself into the task of uncovering the conspiracy, determined to leave no stone unturned. He spent long hours poring over reports, meeting with advisors, and gathering information on those who might have had a motive to kill his father. But as he delved deeper into the murky world of politics, he found himself faced with more questions than answers. The more he uncovered, the more it seemed that the conspiracy was far-reaching, with tendrils that extended into the highest echelons of power. And at the center of it all was Ruda, the admiral whose presence at the funeral had set Kodo's suspicions ablaze. Kodo knew that he had to be careful. Ruda was a powerful man, and if he was involved in the conspiracy, confronting him head-on could be disastrous. But Kodo also knew that he could not afford to wait too long. The longer he hesitated, the more time the conspirators would have to cover their tracks. As Kodo worked tirelessly to uncover the truth, the nation of Gorillist continued to mourn the loss of its leader. The people looked to Kodo for guidance, their hopes pinned on the young man who had shown such strength and resolve in the face of tragedy. But Kodo knew that the path ahead was fraught with danger, and he could not afford to let his guard down. One evening, as Kodo sat alone in his father's study, he found himself overwhelmed by the weight of it all. The grief that he had kept at bay for so long came crashing down on him, and for the first time since his father's death, he allowed himself to weep openly. The tears flowed freely, a release of all the pain, anger, and sadness that had been building up inside him. In that moment, Kodo felt a deep sense of loss, not just for his father, but for the life he had known before. The world had changed in an instant, and he was now thrust into a role that he had never asked for. But as the tears subsided, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His father's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of the task that lay before him. Kodo stood and walked over to the large portrait of his father that hung on the wall. He looked up at the face that had always been a source of strength and guidance for him, and he made a silent vow. He would not rest until he had fulfilled his father's final wishes. He would find the conspirators, expose them for who they were, and bring them to justice. And he would do it with the same integrity and honor that his father had always shown.